Motor Trend, September 1989. Supercars beware. Driving Acura's awesome new 160 mile per hour NSX. Acura NSX. It's fast, it's luxurious, it's not for sale. Yet. By Jeff Carr. Photography by Rich Cox. Honda is a bit of an oddity. Here we have a company that's risen to dominate Formula One racing, the pinnacle of automotive design. And yet, the production cars from Honda, and those wearing the luxury Acura name badge, are strictly street cars in every sense, despite what the advertising tells you. Every last Honda-built car has a front-mounted engine driving the front wheels, except for the four-wheel drive station wagon. It's the classic, sensible packaging arrangement. Honda and Acura build cars for the masses, beautifully engineered to do the job during the normal travails of street travel. But F1 cars, they're not. That's about to change. Most likely, by the 91 model year, Honda people will have a race car that more seriously reflects the company's racing involvement, one that goes up against the supercar powers. The car is the Acura NSX, and it's intended to show the world what Honda can do when it sets out to build a serious sports car. Just how serious? Very. Is it a Ferrari F40 eater? Not a chance. In typical Honda fashion, the NSX is targeted at the middle of a market, though in this case, we're talking about a more upscale bullseye than normally fills Honda's corporate crosshairs. When the decision was made 5 years ago to move forward with the sports car project, the Honda people, as they inevitably do, made a chart. At the bottom end sat low-powered, easy-to-handle sports cars. At the top was an F1 race car. The engineers sought a middle ground between the fun but underpowered bottom-end cars and fast but demanding cars that populated the upper end of the scale. That middle ground was crowded with some of the most gratifying sports cars in existence, stuff like the Porsche 911 and the Ferrari 328. The Honda people felt they could outdo the competition with a subtle balance of engine performance and handling, wrapped in one of Honda's user-friendly ergonomic setups. It would be a sports car both potent and easy to drive, a car with amazing capabilities, but with the good manners to refrain from pounding you too hard around town. The new car would wear the Acura nameplate and would sell for roughly $60,000. Expensive, yes, but certainly not beyond the means of many mature, read rich, sports car buyers. Rumors about this new car have been crackling over the phone lines and echoing off communication satellites for years. The first good look at what was in store was from drawings. Then actual photos of the NSX were released by Acura with little fanfare last winter. Nothing of any substance about the car was disclosed until its appearance at the North American International Auto Show in Detroit, and even then, the information served only to whet the appetite, not to satisfy it. Then, in an unprecedented move this summer, Honda shepherded a handful of journalists to its Tochigi test track in Japan. There, we were treated to an unusually candid look under the aluminum skin of the mid-engine NSX and turned loose on the high-banked oval and snaking road course to see what the car could do. For the notoriously secretive Japanese, revealing so much about the car so long before it goes into production is utterly out of character. In fact, extensive changes are planned, making the production cars significantly different from, and better than, the red prototype car we drove in Japan. But the red car was so good, so refined, that even if no changes were made, Acura would still have a formidable car on its hands. Throughout the conception and design of the car, lightness and aerodynamics were top priorities. Both factors deliver better performance out of a given amount of power. The lightness issue was addressed by keeping the car as compact as possible and by building almost the entire vehicle out of various aluminum alloys. The body, suspension parts, even the seat frames are made from aluminum. The steel parts in this car are few and far between. Besides the fasteners, springs, dampers, and driveline pieces, there's really not a lot. The Honda engineers reckon they saved about 440 pounds by using aluminum at every opportunity instead of heavier materials. The car reportedly weighs in under 2,860 pounds at this point, which makes it, in some cases, hundreds of pounds lighter than its competition of similar power output. A good deal of effort was expended to obtain sufficient stiffness out of the chassis. Aluminum extrusions are used to beef up the door sill areas, and in turn, the chassis' overall stiffness. The alloys used in the body panels are said to have ding and dent resistance equal to sheet steel, so the NSX should stand up to an occasional parking lot assault. As for crash damage, Honda engineers claim that parts cost will be higher, but that the structure will be as tough as a sheet steel car. The pursuit of lightness also dictated certain features that would not be included in the NSX. Automatic adjustable suspension was considered, but it would have added weight, with only minor benefit. The Honda engineers felt the better course was to go with carefully tuned single-setting suspension components controlling the double wishbone suspension at each corner. They settled on coil springs managed by special low-friction gas-charge dampers. A 4WS system would have added about 110 pounds and would require additional space, so the engineers nixed it. The technology that did find its way into the NSX covers the basics. There's a sophisticated 4-channel anti-lock system that controls the quartet of ventilated disc brakes. And by the time the production cars are ready, there will be a traction control system available to keep the rear wheels hooked up and driving. The car we drove in Japan did not have the traction control system installed, as development is still in progress to tune its sensitivity. The Honda people are mindful of realizing the benefits of traction control without having it geld the supercar experience. The power plant for the NSX is still evolving. The basic arrangement is a transverse 3-liter V6 positioned behind the passenger compartment. It drives the rear wheels via a 5-speed manual transmission and limited slip differential. Somewhere down the road, probably in the second year of production, a 4-speed automatic transmission will be available as an option. The V6 is an all-new engine, but it shares its 90-degree V angle and bore center measurement with the engine that powers the Acura Legend. The engine has 4 valves per cylinder, as well as a variable volume intake system and dual exhaust. The car we drove had 1 belt-driven camshaft per cylinder bank. Peak power was said to be 250 horsepower. The performance claims for the car seem conservative. Quarter-mile acceleration is said to be in the sub-14 second range, and the run from 0 to 60 should take less than 6 seconds. Our seat-of-the-pants testing at Tochigi suggests that from 0 to 60, at least, the car is substantially quicker than that. And it will get even quicker before it reaches production. The next-generation engine was on display, but wasn't quite ready to be handed over to the distinguished members of the motoring press for a good flogging. It's a DOHC version of the same basic motor. The NSX embraces its power plant so tightly that, because of the new engine's bulkier cylinder heads, the car's wheelbase will have to be lengthened by about an inch to accept it. This little nugget has variable valve timing, called VTEC, to provide valve opening characteristics that do a superior job of giving each cylinder what it needs when it needs it. At low RPM, each valve in the engine is controlled by its own cam lobe. The opening of the intake valves in each cylinder is slightly staggered to promote swirl in the incoming mixture for better combustion. Above roughly 5,000 RPM, the exact point is determined by the engine management system, the valve timing shifts over to its high RPM setting. At this point, 2 additional lobes in each cylinder take over, and their followers are hydraulically linked to the followers over each valve. This little bit of trickery gives the engine more power everywhere and boosts the peak in excess of 270 horsepower at 7,750 RPM. Though the NSX is still in the prototype stage, the refined behavior and elegant finish of the car we drove was surprisingly close to production quality. Some minor interior pieces look to be one-offs, but the car feels and looks like a finished piece. The interior is spacious and intelligently laid out. The airbag-equipped steering wheel has a tilt feature, and the driving position is ideal. The leather-covered seats are comfortable and supportive, but lateral and lumbar adjustments would be a wise addition to more easily accommodate the notoriously well-fed individuals who can afford to spend $60,000 on a two-seat car. Outward visibility is remarkably good in all directions, a wonderful change from the miserable rear visibility that runs rampant among performance cars these days. Fire the engine and a tight mechanical drone cuts in behind your head. Honda engineers have done extensive sound tuning on this car, and they've got it rumbling pretty nicely. At steady cruising speeds, the engine noise is subdued. The throttle pedal controls the interior decibel level, with the engine note rising and falling in intensity in response to your right foot. The NSX is perfectly behaved. It sounds mean when you want it to, but is just as willing to shut up and leave you to your thoughts. This would be as comfortable and undemanding a traveling machine as a Legend coupe, and at least a match for any current high-performance sports car. Power delivery is absolutely linear, no peaks or valleys. More revs equal more power. There's no discernible vibration, and the motor is happy to zing up to its current 7,250 RPM redline. Acceleration is strong, no question, but at this point at least, it's a notch below the ZR1 Corvette. And again, compared to the ZR1, the NSX has a softer, more comfort-oriented suspension setup. The Acura is remarkably supple over bumps, and the road noise is particularly well isolated from the cabin. This exacts a small toll in terms of ultimate cornering ability, particularly in brutal transient maneuvers, but the car is so neutral and forgiving it's hard to fault the suspension setup for street use. The unboosted steering is light on center and at low speed, then the effort level increases at greater steering angles. The NSX is quite responsive to changes in throttle setting and corners. It's great fun to slide it around in tighter bends and easy to set the chassis just the way you want it with the wheel and the throttle. The Acura is slow getting into trouble in turns and quick to respond to corrections. Compared to the Porsche 911 and the Ferrari 328 Honda had on hand at Tochigi, the NSX was faster, more responsive, more secure and predictable. It was also a lot more fun. Given its somewhat small tires, the Acura's ultimate limits are probably lower than those of the big-tired animals like the Corvette ZR1, but comparable to those of other mid- and rear-engine cars of about the same power output. Regardless of what the NSX's hard performance numbers turn out to be, it's a cinch many drivers would feel more comfortable with the NSX's magnanimous nature than they would with the more skittish supercars. A lot can happen between now and the production car's expected arrival sometime in late 1990. A completely new factory will be built near Tochigi to assemble the expected annual output of 6,000 cars. Of that number, half will end up in the States. Initially, the numbers will be substantially less as the factory gets up to speed. The car will undergo plenty of changes between now and then, but they all should be for the better. Honda engineers claim the NSX won't get any softer or weaker, only stronger and tougher. We hope they're right. They have the credentials, and it's about time the Formula One champion put a chunk of its famous technology in the hands of the driving public.